People say things in anger in life. You know what some people do that say abusive things in anger? Then 2 hours later, they pretend like it never happened. Right? You're the worst thing that ever happened to me. I can't believe I have lived with you. I used to be happy before I met you. You're the reason I'm sick. You're the reason everything's gone bad, etc., etc. I hate you so much. You're the worst mistake of my life. And then 2 hours later, hey, you want to go for ice cream? Hey, what are we doing tonight? Hey, did you get the tickets yet? Acting totally normal, like that didn't happen. And you're like, so should I pretend to be normal too? Because you have to make a calculation in your head. Should I remind them of the crazy things they were saying 2 hours ago? Because that was really exhausting. Should I exhaust myself all over again? Because they seem to have amnesia, right? They forgot all about it. And so you say to yourself, man, that's too exhausting. Let's just go get ice cream. So, so you just go along. You go along. And this is a game some people play. They're abusive, and then they pretend it never happened. Then they're verbally abusive, and then they pretend it never happened. And then they're verbally abusive, and they pretend it never happened. And you keep playing that game along with them. Because it's too tiring to keep on arguing it. It's like being in a boxing match, and you're like, finally it's over, and then the bell rings again, and he's standing right there again. And like, okay, I throw in the towel. That's it, you win. I can't argue this anymore. Some people do that. This man and this woman could have just had this argument, and a couple of hours later, he wanted to be with her, yes? He just wanted to be with her. Like, let's pretend it never happened. You can do that. You can do that until Judgment Day. But Allah will remind you that these words that you said are not light. Verbal abuse inside of a family is not light. Saying these things that are absolutely haram to say. Sometimes mothers get dramatic because they watch too much soap operas or Pakistani dramas or whatever. From today you are no longer my son. Or I never want to see your face again. Not until I die. And then they throw in, I swear by Allah, and this and that. Oh my God. And you think these words that you say, they don't have any consequences? They're not being recorded? Allah didn't hear this conversation that happened inside of a bedroom? And revealed ayat about it? Because when you get to pretend that you never said it, and that you made the other person force amnesia on the other person also, Allah doesn't forget. Allah will hold to account. And Allah's verdict on especially taking family relationships and making verbal abuse okay inside family relationships is very harsh. It's not a small thing. There's a reason 4 ayat like that came down. That's a pretty big thing. This is what happened in another time of the Prophet's life. This is important to connect. You know, in Ramadan, you're not supposed to be with your wife when you're fasting. A companion came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I've killed myself, I've destroyed myself. What happened? I was with my wife. Well, in Ramadan. What should I do? And no Quran has come. The Quran never tells you what you should do if that happens. But this man came and said, I had intimacy with my wife, what should I do? In Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ said, free a slave. Where am I going to find a slave? And I can't afford to. He said, fast 60 days. He says, I couldn't handle Ramadan. How am I going to fast 60 days? And he says, feed 60 people. He said, I don't know, between these 2 mountains, there's no one poorer than my family. If you know one, let me know. And then the Prophet ﷺ gave him, again, baskets of food and said, go give this to people. And he says, the leftover can I keep? He says, yeah, you can keep it. Go. But what the Prophet ﷺ gave him is 3 answers. Free a slave, fast 60 days, or feed 60 people, yes? Which is exactly what he said in Surah Al-Mujadala. Allah said, why did the Prophet take the revelation of Surah Al-Mujadala, which is about men calling their wives your mother, and he applied it to a completely different situation? I was asking one of my teachers, Dr. Akram Nadwi, about that, and his answer was brilliant. He said both of these have something in common. When you take something that is haram, and you purposely made it halal for yourself, then it's the same rule. And when you take something halal, the wife, and you make her haram for yourself, same violation. Only Allah decides what's halal. Only Allah decides what's haram. When you take that in your own hand, you better make up for it. That's what these two have in common. This is not a small thing. We have to be careful about the things we say and do. And words inside of a home are not being recorded by Allah. They're being very carefully recorded by Allah. قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا. The word of this woman, not even when she came to argue with the Prophet ﷺ, from way back when. All of her arguments with her husband, all of them are recorded. All of them are with Allah. So be mindful, especially with the way you speak to people in your family. especially with them. We are the nicest when we meet strangers. Assalamu alaikum, how are you? MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. Then you get in the car with your wife and kids, or your husband, or your siblings, and you're like, the face changes, the tone changes, the words change, the attitude changes. The Prophet ﷺ says, the best of you are the best to your families. Most of us are the worst to our families. We're the best to everybody else. We look great to everybody else. We're the worst to our own families. Worst to our own spouses. Husbands to wives, wives to husbands. This is how we have forgotten Allah's book. I pray that this khutbah is a reminder for myself and for all of you to be careful with how we use our tongues in the context of our homes.